welcome back to Ron's Radio Corner. And this is probably one of the oldest radios I own, not from the standpoint of when it was made, but for how long I've owned it. Honestly, this is a transistor radio. It says transistor up here on the top. I've done a little bit of Googling to try to figure out who made it or recall it. I see these on eBay. It looks like they were sold under the name of like Beach Boy, not Beach Boys, which would be the musical group, but Beach Boy transistor radio. There's some packaging that definitely wanted to get the nostalgic 1960s surfer Beach Boy sort of era in mind. And I think they did a pretty good job. I mean, radios like this predate me, but when I saw this radio in a department store, I want to say I might have had this radio close to 20 years. Certainly, I think more than 15. So I guess the big question for me is whether or not I've owned this or the GE Super Radio 3 longer. But when I saw this radio in the department store, the retro nostalgia look of it is certainly what drew me in and was a big part of why I bought it. Now, sadly, and I think I mentioned this in one of the first videos I did when I talked about novelty radios, one of the things I've always found with this radio is that what you got here was a radio with it might not be fair to say the beauty's only skin deep, but it's got a great look to it, but it's not really a remarkably good radio. It sounds decent, and it tunes in all the local channels relatively well, but it's certainly not an exceptional radio. And I don't remember what I paid for it. What I do remember is right around the same time, there was the same department store where I bought my GE Super Radio 3, stocked a Sony transistor radio. I don't remember the model number of that radio, but that radio is pretty iconic in its own right. I think if you think of Sony radios from the last 20 years, if you're thinking of a small pocket radio, you probably already have it in your head. It was a gray radio. I have one kicking around someplace. A gray radio, with the sort of black plastic where the tuning dial is. And I know those radios sold for just under $10, like $9.99, because I bought like 3 or 4 of them. I had 2 that I used to keep around the house kicking around. One I bought for a friend. I think I might have bought a 4th one to give to my father. And because I had done a little bit of digging and a little bit of research when I was looking for radios that had, just really good reception, the ability to really pull in channels. And that radio came up. So that radio was $10 back around the time that I bought this one. I want to say that this radio was either the same or maybe even a little bit more. And I can tell you this radio, despite the great looks, doesn't perform nearly as well as that Sony, which I got to go find that Sony so I can, it's a little beat up and battered, but I got to find that Sony so I can put it up on the channel. So one of the things I found right away when I picked up this radio is, as much as I liked the look of it, I've never been impressed by the performance. It's an okay radio, but nothing exceptional. What is exceptional is the look of it. And I think unless someone knows better than me, I'm sure there's a lot of people who know better than me. I think this is very clearly inspired by the Realtone Comet. And I've done a little bit of research and a little bit of digging around, just a little bit, and came across a pretty interesting page talking about the Realtone Comet and Realtone as a company. And I'll do my best to link that in the description for this video. But this radio might have come out in 1959, 1960, not the one in front of you, the Realtone Comet, and was made for about 6 years. And then Realtone, in that time span, had introduced the sound design name, and then at some point becomes sound design. They drop the Realtone moniker and go by sound design. And sound design is is a name I'm very familiar with because there was all sorts of sound design stuff out there when I was a kid. One of my first stereos was a sound design, and can remember going into the stores and seeing all the sound design stuff for sale. So interesting, and I'm kind of wondering what happened to sound design, and if this radio might have any direct lineage to it, or if it's just a radio that does an awful lot to look like that original Realtone Comet. So, pretty basic radio. I don't have anything to kind of give you a comparison in size, but see, up to my hand, I do have the one Pesare Y706 nearby, and you can see that they're similar in size, similar in thickness. This guy is a little bit taller. It's a basic AM/FM radio. Headphone jack on the side here. Runs on 2 AA batteries, which are housed in there. It does not have a telescoping antenna. Instead, you just get this wire lead, which can be folded up and placed inside the battery compartment. Now, what I wish I had done is I wish I had set up my laptop to play some royalty-free music so I could give you a little demonstration of how it sounds. But we'll turn it on. We'll flip through some stuff.
5 for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
It should have a label there that tells you AM from FM. That's AM right there. That's FM. Mine has never had that label.
And together we'll figure out.
Ending this, saying that this is
Doctors brief the public saying Pope Francis is not out of danger yet as he battles pneumonia, but also stressed he is not in danger of dying from the virus. Existing home sales dipped last month, another sign higher mortgage rates are putting a damper on the market, and another report shows consumer confidence slid, concerns over potential tariffs. This is Amy.
Getting a little buzz in there. Back
non-target tax, but an industry publication for tax professionals urges Americans to submit their returns as early as possible to avoid any future delays.
Doctors in Rome say Pope Francis is not out of danger from pneumonia.
Somewhere in here is that
The
classical
Pope
music
has been in the
station
hospital for a week. Across country,
that I like
deep
to
freeze this week could
that I
give
like to
way
use,
falling
but
temperatures. Faith Abube is
this
in
isn't
hard-hit
pulling it in.
Kansas City, Missouri.
for the 4th straight day. Kansas City breaking.
So, it's not a bad sounding radio, but it can be A little tough to tune.
This weekend, we're expecting a little bit of a warm-up and also some less wind, which is going to be
Of course, amazing.
Confirming the WSAR.
Ah, well, there's a problem. Hold on a second. I was wrong. I thought,
Management practices, visit straighttalk.com.
Did you know your
now we're on FM.
believe this is going to be his.
They hadn't even covered him up yet, so we didn't even get.
It's gonna be good.
Shifting out tomorrow.
famous hates given an ultimatum of sorts by.
And they absolutely just had a stake game. And
And unfortunately, I just can't tune in the classical station. But you did hear it. Oh, there we go. There we go. For the size of the radio, it doesn't sound bad. For the size of the radio, it doesn't sound bad. There we go. So, I will tell you that when I bought this radio, that tuning eye was a cute little design feature, right? Which again harkens back to that Realtone Comet. Now, several years later, I find that without those glasses, I'm pretty much just surfing through a dial and not really reading anything. As far as performance goes, I assume this is straight out analog just because of how long I've owned it. And it's not a fair comparison because the Wen Pesare Y706 is, did I say Y706? Y706. Because that is certainly DSP, and everything that I've heard and read, huge advantage, you know, the DSP chips as far as their selectivity and their ability to lock in a station. But still, I was able to pull in about 9 or 10 FM channels with this. I didn't do a lot to fuss around. I had it sit on a table and I tuned in stations. I was able to pull in about 12 FM stations with this, with the mast up. Since I have the wire out, I thought that was fair. For AM, I was only able to get about 2 or 3, and I was able to get about 7 with the Wen Pesare. Not a really fair comparison, or maybe not a fair comparison because of the DSP chip. But I thought, since I would argue that that's probably one of my worst radios as far as its ability to pull in channels, it seemed like the right one to choose. Now, if I back these two guys up a little bit here, as a comparison, and yes, much more expensive radio, bigger radio, nicer radio. But to give you an idea what was out there, I picked up about 19 FM channels with this and about 10 AM channels. So literally more than twice as many as this was able to pick up on on FM, and about 3 times as many on AM. But obviously much different radio. Just a shame, because I think there could be a market, potentially. There could be a market for someone to make a retro styled product that was actually really good as far as its performance, its build quality. I think a lot of times, and I have a few retro style things because I like the style, but I think a lot of times when a company makes something that's going for some sort of nostalgia factor, they sort of throw the idea of building a really rugged, well-made product out the window. It's all about the looks, and that beauty is sort of skin deep. I think one of the few things that I can say that maybe bucks that trend is I did a video on a Vornado V-Heat that I bought, and straight out, it was another situation where the looks of the product just appealed to me, and I wanted to buy it because of that, although it's rather expensive. You know, I was able to get one at a really good price, so I said, sure, I'm going to pick one up, and that seems pretty well made. You know, solid metal construction, it's heavy, works really well, but in general, you see all these record players out there that are sort of going for that retro look, and no one says, wow, you can't buy a better made record player than. It's always just the opposite. You know, what a piece of junk. It looks nice, but that's about it. You know, there's a ton of retro inspired radios out there, but I don't know if you want to call the Sanjin WR11 and that style part of the retro line of radios, or the Tivolis. If you do, then they're really sort of the only ones that I can think of that you could say are really, really well-made, great quality radios. Although there are some other table radios that I've seen reviewed that seem to be fairly well-made, but at least by the reviews on YouTube. But you know, I think about the cathedral radios, right? There's these cathedral radios, and they're much, much smaller than what an original cathedral radio was, and they're certainly never made as well. I've looked at lots of those YouTube videos, looking at the ones that used to have the cassette in the side of them, and people pull them apart and say, you know, these really aren't even worth fixing. They're just not well made. So I'm off on a little bit of a tangent there. I don't use this every day, so the fact that I've had it as long as I've had it, is it a combination of, hey, maybe it's better made than I'm giving it credit for, or I just don't use it much? But you know, it's got a nice weight to it. Everything feels, you know, well made. Nothing too plasticky or too tinny. You know, I mean, it's obviously plastic, but it's, you know, it's a well made, thick case. Feels reasonably durable. I think I don't necessarily want to drop it off a table, but I think it would survive one. Although I can see maybe something getting cracked or chipped on the front of it. I used a little bit of contact cleaner before I shot this video today because the volume knob had a little bit of that crunchiness in it. And I've done that once or twice before over the time I've had it, and you know, it seems to work well. I do find it finicky to tune. And like I said, the performance is just, it is what it is. Good for the local stuff, not much else. If there's anything that really surprises me about this, is trying to try to remember who made it, and remember a little bit more about it. I've seen these in a slightly updated style sell on Amazon as recently as a year or so ago. And when I was looking today, I ended up looking on eBay, and I can't believe how much people are, you know, asking for basically a knockoff. I mean, this thing is, you know, this isn't from 1960. This is, you know, from like 2000 something. But there were people. I think the cheapest one I saw is $10, but then you got to factor in shipping, and it would be like 20 something before you got it to your door, unless you happen to live in the same town. But I saw several where people were asking like 20 something bucks for them and more. And I thought to myself, you know, for that money, you can buy much better pocket radios. You can buy much better radios. So I was a little surprised by that. For that money, you could potentially be searching around on eBay or something and potentially find a working Realtone Comet. You could actually buy the radio that probably inspired this one instead of buying the knockoff. So I'll leave it there. I think that's actually, I'm looking at the time and it's a little surprised that we've gone 20 minutes to talk about this radio because I didn't think there was that much to talk about. But this is the Transistor, I think the Beach Boy Transistor radio. If you come across one cheap someplace, it's not a bad little fun radio to have around for the local stuff. But if you're looking for a really good quality radio with a retro look, maybe you might need to go find a vintage radio that's in working condition. Thanks for watching.